いや、バリューはされない。
Welcome to the lazyfluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Miami.
And the topic of the day is apathy. Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and or drop a review to the platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, apathy. America is in a state of constant rage, panic, and turmoil over issues like climate change, social and economic injustice, and more. Anytime anything happens anywhere in the world, you can bet that any American, including myself, will have an opinion on it. In Japan, on the other hand, well, unless you're discussing someone's immediate circumstances, I feel that in most cases you are met with apathy or complete ignorance on most political affairs. Is that a good thing? And is that even true? Today we're talking about apathy in its many different facets. I have a bunch of different things listed here. I mean, are you familiar with the term apathy? And do you feel that it embodies the Japanese spirit, I guess I should say.
なんかちょっと今思い出したんだけど、アプティの単語を聞いた瞬間に、なんかこれジョークでなんだけど、そのニューロロジーに回ってる時に、誰かがその先生からアパシーじゃないかって言われて、なんでかっていうと、それは先生が質問、クエスチョン聞いてるのにそれに答えられないから、バカだよねっていうことでアパシーって言ってたっていうなんて言うんだろう。
Oh, so wait, people not understanding what the teachers. Oh, so go ahead.
サーカズムで皮肉でアパシーだから答えられないのかねみたいな。あなたはバカって言いたいの、その先生は。
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, so do you feel, and actually, how would you best define I know there's apashi, right? Apashi and mukiryoku.
アパシー、無気力。そうね。
Do you feel like, well, my little intro section there, that Japanese people are apathetic, as in they don't tend to be very concerned? Obviously, I'm defining, like, I think everybody's generally concerned about their own life circumstances, but I'm saying, do you feel like Japanese people tend to be apathetic about things outside their immediate life, like, say, political issues, foreign affairs, I don't know, wars and conflicts around economics and things like that? Do you find that people tend to be very into those things? And if they are into those things, do they have strong opinions? What's your general feeling about that?
なんか個人的な意見としては、平均すると全然なんて言うんだろうね、live in the bubble みたいな感じなんで、みんなで、その何か強い意見持ったりね、例えばクライメートチェンジとかさ、あと今 SDGs とかあるじゃん。
SDGs?
なんかその環境を守ろう的な感じの、なんか
Oh, yeah.
そうそういうの。
I thought you mean like STDs for a second, but yeah, never mind.
SDGs を例えばその活動してる人とか、そういう人はなんかなんて言うんだろう、意識高い系みたいな感じでとらわれて、であとそうね、最近その学校に留学生が来てたっていうのもあって、やっぱりさ、その世界大戦とかってやっぱり避けては通れないじゃん。その生活する上でその一般的な常識として知っとくべきじゃない。で、その私は全然覚えてなかったのね。そのどういうことが起こったとかね、そういう恥ずかしながら覚えてなくて、でそういう常識を覚えてないから、なんか最近勉強しないといけないって思い始めてるっていうのを昨日その友達に話したんだよ。
Yeah, as in, you feel like you have to be more well-read or well-studied?
そうとか、歴史。
And also, can you... So go ahead. I was wondering, can you explain what, for people who might know, what you mean by iski takaike? Because I know if you just take the words as they are said, it might seem like a good thing, but when you say iski takaike, you're actually, it's not a good thing, right?
はいはい、わかったわかった。意識高い系はどちらかというとね、悪い感じかな。悪い意味で使われる。なんか例えばね、こういうシチュエーションがあって、例えば例えばね、友達が テストに向けて1日8時間勉強してて、で先生にいつもわからないところは授業の後に質問してるんだよみたいなって言ってて、でその他の人がその子めっちゃ意識高い系だねみたいなって言うんだけど、そのなんていうの、意識高い系っていうのはなんて言うんだろう、あんまり好ましくない。
In English, I feel like it. Sorry, go ahead. I was just saying in English, I feel like it'll also tend to be synonymous with like the word woke, as in I'm not sure if you've heard of that word woke before.
What did you say?
Woke as in being
woke.
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 Woke. Woke.
Yes,
W-O-K-E.
O.
It means like basically very sensitive and aware of many different political issues and things like that. Although it also kind of has a derogatory term. I guess though, just going back, so there's a lot of stuff I want to cover here. I have a little list here. So, and especially right now, there's a bunch of stuff been going on, whether it be like the Israel, like the conflict going on right now with like Palestine. And one of the first categories of determining whether or not Japanese people are apathetic. Do you know anything that's going on in Israel, Palestine? And do you feel like other people know right now? This is under the general category of foreign affairs. But I guess with this topic, I kind of have two ways to look at it. There's like ignorance and then there's apathy. And I'm kind of wanting your opinion on, do you feel like either of those fit like the Japanese population more than another? You were talking about how you can be labeled like in a negative light for being too attentive to like, I don't know, many different social issues. But do you feel like it's that Japanese people don't care about stuff or they don't know, or do you feel like it's both? And do you also, is there like any coverage? I've seen some of the news, but do you feel like any of your friends or around you have been discussing anything related to like, for example, like the current conflict in like Israel versus Palestine?
なんか、なんだろうね。待って、what was the first question?
I'm saying, do you feel like, so there's apathetic, which is like, you know, they don't like saying they don't really care. And there's like, and there's like ignorant, muchi. I'm saying, do you feel one of those applies more or less to Japan, or both of them apply, or neither of them apply?
まず、興味はないっていうのは嘘ではないと思う。なんか、でも一応ニュースとかで、今、ガザ地区に、攻撃がこれだけであって、死者とかね、犠牲者が何人ですとか、パレスチナで、こういう何人負傷者いますとかやってたり、あとニュースでも、このパレスチナで、なんていうの、ここの国とここの国がどういう対立をしていて、それが何年続けるとかっていうのもニュースではやってるんだよ。からニュース見る人は、ある程度知識はあるとは思うかな。けど、なんて言うんだろうね。なんかデモとか、それに対してデモとかはしないし、っていうのは、もちろんパレスチナ人が住んでないっていうわけではないけど、かなり少ないじゃん、多分日本に住んでる人で。アメリカとかはさ、結構、確かハディールとか、確か、パレスチナ人だよね。
I mean, like, there's all, like, we could talk about, there's a lot of different things I want to cover.
で、パレスチナ人とかそういう、なんていうの、ユダヤ人とかね。そういう人がいっぱいいるから、なんかデモとか起こるけど、日本だとそういう人がまずあんまりいないから、そういう、なんていうの、戦争やめろっていうこともないし、だからニュースとして知ってはいるけど、もうなんていうんだろう、自分たちのことではないのかなっていうのは、意識は持ってるとは思う。で、あと、こういう、なんていうの、今の戦争の話を友達とするかって言われると、するっちゃするけど、なんか、私が世界大戦をちょっともう一回復習したいっていうきっかけになったのがもうまさに今のやってる戦争で、これって中東戦争から始まってるじゃん。で、中東戦争っていうのも、世界大戦から始まってるっていうか、すごいコネクションがあるから、もうなんか世界史を全部復習しなきゃいけないっていうなんか謎の責任に追われて、 ちょっと頑張ってるみたいな感じなんだけど、でその一人の、チームメイト、このローテーションのチームメイトにちょっと話してて、でそのなんて言うんだろう、今その戦ってるじゃん。どっちが悪いとかはないくて、これがずっと前から続いてるからみたいなっていう話から、やっぱ日本人ってあんまりこういうなんて言うんだろう、世界史とかあんま覚えてないよねっていう話につながったりとかはしてたから、話そうと思えば別に話せなくはないけど、なんかその私の友達が言ってたのは、やっぱりこういう話をするときは周りをちょっと見ないといけない的なのは言ってて、そのやっぱりストロングオピニオンを持ってると、ちょっと周りさ、知らない人が聞いてたらさ、ちょっとさ嫌な思いするとかもあるから、あんま大きな声では言えないみたいなのは言ってた。
Yeah, and do you, I guess I think the context that you were talking about earlier, there, which is how you came to this conversation, is a little bit different than you normally would be, right? Because I feel like one of the reasons you were interested in this topic was because you feel like you wanted to know a lot more about it, right? You had
そ
like
う
this reason
そうだ
thing that you wanted to
し、
learn more about history.
あと自分の無知さにちょっと最近なんて言うんだろうね、嫌気がさすっていうか、なんていうの、もっと知っておかなきゃいけないなっていうのは出てきたね。それはいいことなんだけど、
So, the thing that I like contrasting, because I brought it up at the beginning, was like America and how, and I'm very critical of America and Americans, and so my point was not to be like, well, look how great and politically engaged Americans are, because from the perspective, I feel like Americans do have an opinion on most things, and we had to have, I think, one episode where I talked more explicitly about like American politics, which is American versus Japanese politics or something like that. But I also feel like in America, politics are a hobby, sort of. And it feels like you're always playing sides on like a football team, and so you always need to have an opinion. Someone like if someone's gonna make a claim about, some sport, let's say like your favorite team or whatever. Like let's say like your home team. Let's say I don't know, like I'm currently Panama. Let's say Panama's fighting against, I don't know, they're playing against some other team like Russia or some team in soccer, and it's like, regardless of whether I've seen any game of Russian soccer or in my entire life, I need to have, like, if they're playing, if it comes, I'm like, oh, Panama's involved in this situation, I got to be on Panama's side. And I feel like the U.S. has something like that as well. And that's on one side of the country. And then the other side of the country, because the U.S. is kind of the central focus of a lot of the problems across the entire world, there's like a responsibility that many Americans feel, or maybe a guilt or whatever you want to call it, that makes people want to be very politically engaged. And on top of that, a lot of Americans are like directly can see a lot of the issues with America on a daily basis, especially when we constantly, like, almost all of our media is like, I mean, depending on what political spectrum you come from, but it's like we are like number one in GDP, but like, and number one in all the bad things, and we're like number 30th and 40th in all the good things when you compare to a lot of other countries. And I feel like because of that, the average citizen, and I'm not even talking about like our two-party system and how and a bunch of other different factors. But for Americans, I feel like being politically engaged is almost kind of like, regardless of you're like informed on any situation, is part of like our social currency. You know what I'm saying? It makes you seem like you're a better member of society. Do you feel like that's the case, or do you feel like if someone is doing that with, you said ishiki takai, it makes it seem like they're just acting? Or do you know what I'm saying? Do you feel like there's any genuine, like, oh, this is someone who's well informed, this is what you want to be, like, this is what you want from education? We've talked about Japanese education before, but do you feel like this notion of being considerate towards, or just being aware, politically engaged, is something that's valued in Japan?
どういうことだ？もう一回。
As I'm saying, I'm saying, do you feel that being politically engaged is something that is a value of like
いや、バリューは
され、
バリューはされないよ。
just 完全に
っていうか、いやー、でもどうなんだろうね。おじいちゃんおばあちゃんとかは、特におばあちゃんはないか、おじいちゃんたちは多分 今の政治がどうとかは喋るだろうけど、若者が今の政
What?
治
Mhm.
についてなんか喋ってたら、珍しいねみたいな感じになると思うよ。それこそ意識高い系の、枠に入ると思う。そういうことしていたら。
What do you feel for like if let's say older Japanese people watch the news or don't watch the news, do you feel like what would be some stereotypical takes or opinions you think an older Japanese person would have? Do you think that they're just because in my head I don't even know what I would imagine other than like general. I know like older people just generally grumbling at the government, but do you have any idea of what kind of like political opinions a older Japanese person would have in general? Because like the country. Sorry, go ahead.
難しいね。なんかそれさ、なんて言うんだろう。周りにさ、older people がさ、constantly にいないとさ、わかんなくない？その、彼らの会話をずっと聞いてないといけないから。例えばさ、
Oh,
カフェ
trust me, I could
で、
tell you a bunch for Americans.
カフェとかでさ、座っててさ、周りの会話を聞いてないとそういうことわかんなくない？私カフェとか行くと大体さ、ノイズキャンセリングのさ、ヘッドフォンしてさ、勉強するからさ、全然わかんないんだけど。その
Okay, well, I mean, I feel like that answer in itself was a pretty good revelation as to how like prominent that. For me, it's a soup. I could go on. I could give you like 10, 15 different like when I think of like the elderly and some of their political opinions, like what comes up into my mind. But I do want to ask you, but I haven't mentioned climate change. So there's like been this big movement around like world. I mean, more and more, with Greta Thunberg and in the U.S. I feel like Americans are getting even more serious about it. Do you feel like that issue, for example, we've talked a little bit about foreign affairs. There's some other ones I want to talk about as well, but climate change. Do you feel like there's any push within the youth? They'd be like, hey, this is like, we need to do something about this.
いや、クライメットチェンジ、そんな動きはないんじゃないか？
Like plastic. I know Japan has like a big plastic like overuse issue.
まあ、
Or for example,
うんうん。
overfishing, which is like not related. I mean, like it's not climate change directly, but in terms of like nature preservation and things like that. Japan also gets criticized all around the world for fishing too much. Do you feel like the youth criticize that aspect of Japan?
いや、フィッシングtoo much に対してのクリティサイズはないとは思うけど、まあ、プラスチックはいつからだっけな？何年か前からか、まあ、コンビニとかスーパーとか行って無料でもらえてた、袋が、まあ、有料になったりとかね。っていう動きはまあ結構あるから、まあでもそれは結構当たり前だったんだよね、今、アメリカだと。自分でマイバッグを持って、袋は、まあ、有料だよみたいなのは、もう結構前からやってたんでしょ？
Yeah, but that would be an effort like that would be. I mean, maybe it has like a large. But when I think of the plastic problem in Japan, I think of every single good you ever buy. Any good, a fruit, vegetable, any toy, being Pokemon cards. They're wrapped in layers upon layers of plastic.
まあちょっと
if you know
ね、
what I'm talking
あれ
about.
なんだよ、それをこのことについて話すのにはね、ちょっとね、日本の文化的なので、まあ、おもてなしとかでさ、なんかプレゼントとかもらうときはさ、やっぱりちゃんとラップされて、なんか、まあ、可愛い紙袋でもなんか、まあ、ビニール袋でも何でもいいけど、そういうのにさ、ラップされてた方が、まあ、気持ちがこもってるよねとか、まあ、綺麗に見えるよねっていうことで、そういう何重も放送がされるんだけど、まあ、もったいないよね、普通に考えて。
Yeah, I do have a question actually. It popped in my head. When you were in New York, did you ever get asked about political opinions by any Americans?
いや、なんだっけな。なんか結構自分のオピニオンを言う機会はあったんだよ。でもそれがなんだっけな。日本と比べて、アメリカ、まあ、ニューヨークの、生活はどうとか、どういう印象を受けたとか、あと、まあ、メディカルシステムはどう考えるとかは聞かれたね。で、
Okay, no questions like what do you think about immigration in Japan to help deal with like overpopulation problem or something, or what do you think about the violence or crime, or do you think there's violence or crime or anything like that?
いや、
Nobody.
directly に聞かれてないけど、私が例えばさ、まあ、日本とニューヨーク、違いはどことか聞かれた時に、私はやっぱ人種とか、なんだっけ、何を落としたんだっけ、人種とか、 あとまあ道の綺麗さとかが全然違うよって言って、まあ、人種はやっぱり日本ってあまり人種の、まあ、多様性がなくてっていうのは言ったし、まあ、道もまあ綺麗じゃないよね、なんかそういう整備とかするお金がどこにどう回ってんのかなみたいな。だから自分から言った気がするな。その directly には、質問はされてない。
Okay. And rolling back over to just like get main directly back to the like topic of apathy. From what I've gathered so far, you're basically saying like a lot of these topics don't really come up. You're not like sure maybe what the elderly's opinion would be on the topic. Sometimes you can make conversation about them, but there doesn't seem to be that much knowledge. Why do you feel like that's the case in Japan? Do you have any idea, like thoughts about why, for example, why you never heard about, for example, like the Israel, like Palestine conflict before like this recent like event occurred? And do you think it's a good or bad thing that's like that? I have my like own opinions about this because it's like mixed. But do you like have any ideas like why do you think you mentioned you felt like Japan was a bubble? What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
まあバボー in a bubble っていうのはそれをなんて言うんだろう、友達とかも知ってる人と話さないし、まあ話してる人もいるかもしれないけどね、あんまりそのトピックで話すことはないかな。で、まあなんでかっていうと、そういうことを話してると、やっぱり意識高い系みたいなまあ、言われるのを気にして言わないっていうのはまあ、ないかもしれないけど、でもそれを気にして言わない人もいるかもしれない。なんて言うんだろう。そのやっぱりさ、政治とか、まあ、戦争の話とかってさ、やっぱりなんて言うんだろう。まあ、ちょっとタブーっちゃタブーなのかな。まあ、その誰かが話しててそれをまあ聞こえちゃうとやっぱり気分が悪くなる人もいるじゃん。だからそれを公の場で話すことはあんまり少ないし、そもそもなんだろうね。そう意識高い系と思われするよね。そういう話をしてると多分。
Okay. But you think that's like I'm trying to get an idea of like exactly. So you mentioned bubble. By bubble, do you mean like Japan, the country itself, is in a bubble, or like when you're talking between your Japanese friends, and even like about Japanese events? That's what I'm curious about. Is that kind of conversation, from my personal experience, almost rarely comes up either. It's not just that there isn't conversation about like global issues, but I rarely hear conversations about anything news related, like anything news related. Like when I'm talking with like another Japanese person.
かね、なんだろう。まあ、私はさ、まださ、学生だからさ、一般社会の人がどういう会話してるかも全然わかんないんだよ。もう私自身も in a bubble, in a way なんだよ。その、ね、学校っていうセリングのバブルの中にずっといるからさ。だからこれが必ずしもジェネラルな意見ではないんだけど、なんて言おうとしたんだっけちょっと待って、なんて言おうとしたか忘れちゃった。そうだ。そう、まあ、カントリーが、まあ、イナバボーだし、ちょっとずつ開いてってはいるけどね、その、バボーから。でも、その、まあ、カントリー itself も in a bubble and also その、個人、individual も in a bubble な気がする。なんか、ちょっとね、なんだろう。ちょっとこれ言っちゃ悪いかもしれないけど、なんか平均的な、その、民度っていうのかな。その、民度を、ちょっと、ね、英語でなんて言うか知らんけど、average person の会話って大体、なんか、あの子かわいいよねとか、あの子かっこいいとか、なんか、ルッキズムの話しかしてないの。なんか本当に。電車とかでも聞いてる感じ。なんか、あと、なんか、リレーションシップの話とか。なんか、ってなっちゃうよね。なんかそんな、楽しいのかなって思っちゃうけど。
I will say the one issue I've remembered actually seeing in person being discussed, and I do see that actually posted around Japan, and when I like the school I studied abroad at in Japan was like more Western-fied, so maybe this might have been why, but the issue like the sex relations between like male, female, like sekuhara, chikan, or just like pawahara are things I actually do hear discussed a decent amount. But that's like the main one that sticks out as an example to me that's very different from other stuff. But obviously that's coming from like the like a woman's perspective. I don't know if I've ever heard a Japanese dude give a Oh no, I remember. The only time I remember hearing a Japanese dude give an opinion was when he was trying to explain why. Literally, this wasn't like a weird stand-up joke. It was like he was asking people questions about like perceived gender roles or something like that. But and he was
roles?
really. Yeah, like what yakuari, what you do expectations, and he was just very like, even though he was younger, he just felt like he was talking to an old man. He's like, yeah, no, if a woman isn't pretty, he said, a most important thing for a woman is her looks, and
oh my God.
like I don't really care about anything else. And it's just, but he was like it wasn't like he was like trying to be mean to. It was just like that. He's like, so kirei, what is it? Kirei nara ii kedo, or something like that. I remember that from my head. But
もうすごいなんかそういう会話がね、めちゃめちゃもう普通一般人たちは私が一般人じゃないって言ってるわけじゃないよ。なんかなんていうの、平均的な人はそういう話しかしないんだよ。彼女は可愛い子がいいとかさ。本当にもうムカついてくる本当に。ダメだ、ごめんなさい。
Well, to not make you too angry, I will say that I do believe, and I'll ask you about this, about whether you think this is a good or bad thing. Well, I don't know, I haven't ran studies on this. This is like kind of our feelings, but I feel like a lot of people probably feel this way a lot. And I felt like I don't feel like I have talked to hundreds of Japanese people, for a bunch of different topics, and this is something that I do feel like there is a great sense of apathy, but there are sectors of it, and people know, I'm a fan of Japan, I'm a fan of Japanese, it's not like I dislike it, where for me, it's very cathartic in a sense, because to me, it's like anytime if you do talk to a Japanese person about this, and you're actually friends with them, they kind of have a blank slate, which it could be a good or bad thing. Like you could come in, and if you're somebody with, I'll just say toxic opinions or views, I feel like you can easily infect the mind of whoever you're talking to. But also at the same time, I feel like it's very freeing to feel like you can enter a conversation. I mean, maybe Japanese won't feel this way between themselves, but when I speak with Japanese people, that I'm not constantly dancing around tripwires, what you are in like an American conversation, where you can say one thing, whether it be about religion, whether it be about like an off comment about the homeless population, like you're saying, like just small stuff, or like immigration, gun control. There are just so many different issues where you mentioned something, or cars. Everybody knows I hate cars. I need to make it clear. I mean, Panama has a car problem, and it's driving me insane, as well. But you mention any one of these, and you're always aware of it too. So like there's like a whole strategy you learn as an American, or at least maybe you either learn it or you don't learn it, and you're the one who makes everybody uncomfortable for a bunch of situations where, especially if you're talking to a specific person that you think is more closed-minded, where you always have to approach a conversation almost like, here's the thing. If you're in a conversation with a lot of people, they will make no attempt to do what you're talking about earlier, which is like conceal or tatemae, or maybe if they don't even have an opinion, to express one or whatever. Whereas in like the American side of things, I have a family friend, and I remember I was talking to the family friend's father, and I had to pretend like he had this whole conversation about how he's like, so you know English, and I'm really proud you know English, because I had some when I was a kid. Everybody knew English, all the immigrants coming in, great, fantastic immigrants. Everybody coming in, really wanting to be an American. But now these immigrants nowadays, they're just coming here and ruin the whole country. They don't want to speak English, they're just speaking Spanish, and like, I'm not racist. I hire Mexicans, literally. He was like, I hire Mexicans, or whatever. But it was just like, and I just had to be there, and I'm like, bro, I can't change his mind. And he's so, in his head, there's nothing you could do to possibly convince him that he's even being inappropriate. There's one right path in his head, and I feel like with American conversations, it can really derail into that every time, and you have to get really good at balancing, and not, especially if you want to maintain any sense of like not placating people who you think are bigots. You have to be able to disagree in a way with them not even aware you're doing it. Whereas in Japan, I feel like things about religion, people probably don't even think about it, so I don't even have to have a conversation. Or things about, what I'm saying, gun control.
やれなんだよ。we don't have っていうか、なんて言うんだろうね。一応神道っちゃ神道だけどさ、マジで信じてない方の神道。
Well, no, that's my point. That's what I'm kind of talking about with I'm saying most subjects there's a general whether it be ignorance or lack of caring about them, which as an American I find it refreshing, but I also do concern, like if I was a Japanese citizen, I definitely feel like I would be frustrated about it. Especially with, there's a lot of things that, for example, if I lived in Tokyo, I would totally be on a commission board or something to ban cars from the Shibuya crossing. There should not be cars allowed in the Shibuya crossing. It should be centered around some other way. It is insane to me that there are cars allowed in these insanely densely populated areas. And or something like I would be, you guys know I hate cars, but I'm just saying there's so much like activism potential in a lot of places in Japan that we can make even better. And I feel like there's probably no way you could even convince someone to be interested in doing something like that. And I partially can see where they're coming from because the government's so old. But yeah, I don't remember why. Oh, I guess this came up because I think, yeah, exactly. You felt like you wanted to learn more about this conflict, and then that brought up the topic of apathy. But how do you guys feel about Japan and the U.S.? Do you feel like this was a mischaracterization of either country? And do you believe like apathy is a good or bad thing? Like, some people think that we can't really do.
これに関してはちょっとさ、日本人の人でなんか聞いてれば、なんかね、聞いたのがね、なんか後輩たちがね、これね、聞いてるらしいんだけど、もし聞いてたら、日本人同士でなんかまあ会話するときに政治とか、まあ戦争とかね、そういう話をするのかしないのかっていうのと、あとそれが、なんて言うんだろう、そういうこと話すのが、まあダメとされてるのかとか、なんかいろいろ意見が欲しいんで、ぜひコメントとかメールしてくださいっていう。はい。
はい。戻りました。
We're back.
来週、アメリカに行って、日本に行く。まあ、それから日本に行く。今、パナマにいる。ってことは、たくさんの国に行くつもり。で、なんていうか、今は4日間の旅行がある。まあ、今からというか、来週の月曜日かな。それで今の問題は、どうやってその4日間の旅行、まあ、旅行というか、飛行機での自由時間と飛行機の中の、での時間を楽しめるか、まあ、楽しめるというか、生き延びられるかという話。あいみは、旅行が、まあ、旅行っていうか、飛行機が好きですか？その飛行機の中の。
I mean, I am a person who can't sleep on the plane, and also I can't watch or like finish even one movie. I get distracted, and also like lots of stuff. And my advice for you is to adjust the time zone and then sleep according to the time you're going. How do you say? According to the time of the country you're going to. So like on your plane from America to Japan, you have to sleep on the schedule of Japan.
いや、でも、いろんな問題ある。まず、今はパナマにいる。多分月曜日にアメリカに戻る。戻るには1日ぐらいかかる。で、アメリカに着いてから12時間後に日本に行く。その、なんか睡眠を、なんていうか、制御する時間がない。まあないというか、 かなり難しい。なぜかというと、そのアメリカにいる12時間の間にいろいろパッキングしないといけない。
I don't
で、ま
know.
た、どうぞ。
You have to blame yourself. That's on you because you didn't prepare before you.
分かってる。文句言ってない。これは解決の話、今は解決探してるんだよ。もう問題作ったということは分かってるんだけど、今は多分25時間の空の中での飛行機の中での時間がある。また多分15時間の飛行機じゃなくて空港で待ってる時間がある。その時に空港で待ってる時何するの？なんか、全然寝られないからそれはダメだと思うんだけど、同時に空港にいる時なんか全然なんかやらなくちゃいけないことがあってもできない。なんかわかる？課題とか用事とか、あとイメールでも全然なんか集中できない。
Well, I don't know. I mean, you have to, okay, at least you have to list up what you want to bring to Japan on the plane, right? Because you got like only...
それは遅すぎるでしょ。
I mean, no, from Panama to America.
そう。
Because you gotta pack in 12 hours, so like,
じゃあ
at least you have to do that.
それは1時間かかるとして多分それ1時間使って残る時間は11時間ぐらいかな。それでその残りの11時間はどうすればいいの？今の時点でアニメと今持ってる本、狼と子診療と他の本持ってるけど、問題なのは多分2時間が過ぎるとめっちゃ眠くなるけど全然寝れない。
Well, I don't know. I think I'm not the person who you want to ask advice for because so when I took a flight from New York to Japan, I slept whenever I wanted to, and that resulted in the bad way because like I had to go to rotation on the next day, and since I couldn't control my like sleepiness, I felt so tired, and then I had a headache in the afternoon at rotation. So like I was sleeping in front of professors on the first conference day. And that was so embarrassing, and I feel so sorry. So if you have like melatonin or something, you have to bring it. And yeah, and so
いいアイディア。それは考えたことないわ。
Yeah, I think it works, and many people say it's good for like adjusting the time zone. So yeah, at least it works. But I mean, I don't want to, like, how do you say, like, depend on like artificial things. So
いや、わかるけど、本当に月曜日、火曜日、水曜日、木曜日の夜、多分午後9時ぐらいまで、ずっと旅行というか、トラベル。今まで多分人生で一番長い連続的な経験になる。今一番悩んでることはパナマじゃなくてアメリカに戻るとき12時間のレッドアイじゃなくて何でしたっけ？日本語で何て言うかわからないけど、空港で寝ることになる。飛行機じゃなくて空港。で、空港だと物事を盗まれてほしくないから、
物がね、
もちろん寝たくない。 そう、盗まれてほしくないから寝たくない。でも同時に寝ないとやばい。
That's interesting.
その時はどうすればいい？
So like, if you're at a Japanese airport, you don't have to worry about your luggage, to be stolen, like while you're sleeping.
そうなの？まあ、
Yeah, if I...
Japanese airport の中でも Japanese 以外の人がいるでしょ。
But I think for me, I will sleep in that situation if I feel sleepy. I don't know. I know I have to be cautious, but like being a Japanese person, we're so used to being surrounded by like safe environment. So I don't know. I know it's not a good thing, but so you which
ちなみに
airport?
成田空港は、
Mm-hmm.
その何でしたっけ？空港の中の、キャプセルホテルあったっけ？
I don't know. Maybe no.
うん、それあったらいいな。今、シアトルかな。私が泊まるというか、は。で、もちろんホテル、に泊まりたくない。なんかホテルが嫌いじゃなくて、だから$100以上かかる。そのホテル、空港に近いホテルはいつもなんか$150、$200かかる。で、1日だけでそんな金ないわ。と思っちゃう。その空港の近くにあるホテルに泊まったことあるの？
Yeah, when wait, what? Like,
その
I
例えば
guess, yeah,
空港で
one or two times, yeah.
そう、乗り換えはめっちゃ長い、なんていうか、待つ時間があるとき、その空港で寝ることになったときに、そのホテルに空港に近いホテルに泊まったことある？
I think I've never experienced, like spending like a lot of time during transit. So, yeah.
それ、値段の高い切符買ってるからです。
No. I mean, like...
いつも一番コスパの、コスパというのは、値段的に安いけど、体的に値段が高い。
I mean, like, so like for my family trips, we went to pretty close countries like Guam. Guam is not a country, but yeah. Guam is like 8 hours and then there's like direct flights, right? And also like, I don't remember about Fiji, but yeah, like Singapore, it's pretty close. And also I went to Australia. It was like 8 hours, yeah, if I remember right. And that was direct. Yeah.
そう、今は96時間くらい。総じて、アメリカに、パナマに戻ってから日本に行く行くというか、日本に着くまでは、結構かかる。とりあえずおすすめがあったら、ぜひぜひ教えてください。今ちょっと恐怖というか、やりたくないなと思ってるけど、日本に行くにはもちろん飛行機に乗らないといけないから、しょうがないかな。おすすめがあればどうやって生き延びられるか、ぜひ教えてください。And we're back with the final section. And if you made it to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment, question, language related, and or otherwise. And this week we have 2 comments. And the first one is from Artboy. To be honest, I don't interact with other Japanese learners at all because a lot of them just seemed annoying. Lol. I just found native friends and just talk with them, even when I was a beginner. But from the little of what I've seen, the most militant people don't speak or write the most naturally. Like Joey said, it's just imposing perfectionism on others. It's a huge Dunning-Kruger effect. I've noticed that language learning and fitness culture have a lot in common. And it's a lot of people try to one-up each other on minute things or people just trying to sell products and services. Also, about Japanese English learners, they are super critical about their or other Japanese people's accents for some reason. Even if someone's English is supernatural and fluent, I've seen other Japanese people comment on their accents for some reason, totally ignoring the content of what they're saying, if they can understand it, that is. Thanks for the comment, Artboard. First off, I think we did talk about this before, but maybe I just haven't met the certain kinds of Japanese or English learning Japanese people that you have met. But from my personal opinion, and I don't like just keeping it a buck, keeping it 100. I have not felt like Japanese people are very critical of each other. Maybe there are within the Japanese thing, like to each other, but most of the time I feel, maybe I'm not hearing it, but that the average level of English is not so high. Therefore, any amount of English is considered impressive. But Aimi, do you feel like Japanese people are very critical about, it's not haro, it's haro or something, even though it's like, I don't even know.
多分ね、これ合ってるかどうかわかんないけどね、R ボーイが言ってることが、なんかこれは、なんかある程度さ、できる人たちになんて、ちょっと待って、日本語が出てこないよ。ある程度できる集団っていうのは、他の人たちの、アクセント気にするんだけど、まあ、あんまりできない人たちは、英語喋れるだけですごいすごいみたいなんだけど、例えばさ、TOEIC、満点ですとか、なんかそういう集団っていうのはさ、なんて言うんだろう、ちょっと間違えただけで、ここが違うとかっていう指摘をしがちなんじゃない？で、そういう集団の人たちってさ、perfectionism を持ってるしっていうのもあるし、で、もう一つ言えるのが、まあ、ご存知の通り日本は、あまり人種の多様性がないから、アクセントを持って話してる、セカンドラングエッジ、なんだっけ、イングリッシュをセカンドラングエッジとして学んだ人たち、例えば、ユーロッパの人たちとかね、とかの英語をあまり聞くことがないから、もうパーフェクトなイングリッシュ、例えば、英語圏のアメリカ、イギリス、オーストラリア、ニュージーランドとかね、なんかカナダとかのイングリッシュを基準にしちゃいがちっていうのもあるんじゃない？
You just brought up something. So I just went for the first time to a Spanish comedy stand-up comedy act, and how this relates to this conversation. It made me realize that I feel like what you were saying earlier, we were talking about English, right? In places that are outside non-standard, or non-native speaking English, and you might like feel like those types of English stick out more as being incorrect. Whereas like to me as an American, there's so much different kinds of English. I think I don't really think I've ever met like an actual Native American, like, English speaker, especially an American, really. And your English has to be completely just, you like actually can't understand anything for someone to feel like give you any level of criticism of your English ability. But when I was listening to the comedy act, what I learned, and maybe it's related to Japan, is, or maybe kind of think about Japan, is in the case of Japan with like Americans or whatever, another native English speaker learning Japanese, they have their variations or whatever of dialects, but I think it's hard to compare, like, just because Japan is only one country, as opposed to an entire world that speaks English. It's a lot easier to get an idea of like perfect Japanese, especially because everybody has to learn a standard dialect in Japanese. And I feel like that makes Japanese language learning a lot more toxic, because of an imperial like unification of all the dialects. And if that never happened, I don't feel like people would be as anal about a lot. I mean, like within like different communities. And to be clear, I'm talking about online people, not in person. I like all the people, Japanese learners I met are great. And just as how this was relating to Panama, and I never really thought, for one, like my day-to-day Spanish exposure, aside from like my mom and my grandma, like nobody in Idaho I know speaks Spanish. Obviously, everybody learned it. They don't know. I'm actually surprised. Can I just quick aside here? And I know that like I am half Panamanian, and I've listened to, obviously, like I used to go to school like when I was a kid in Panama as well. But let me just let me take this time to vent about how annoying, and I am like the amount of effort and time I put into Japanese is tremendous. Spanish, effort absolutely zero. I barely listen to anything in Spanish, like ever. And I go to a comedy club, the guy's speaking 1,000 miles per hour. And I can still somehow follow it. What the hell? And I don't know if it's English is so just similar to Spanish, which it is. But I'm like, dude, it's not fair how much more difficult Japanese is than other languages as an American speaker. Zero effort, Spanish. Zero. None. And I go ahead.
幼い頃からのさ、exposure はやっぱり。
I don't think it's just that.
Ah, そうなの?
Like, I have to let you know, dude, I left when I was like 8. And I wasn't even in Panama the whole time.
でも8まで、違う、なんか、なんだっけな。3歳までとかにエクスポージャーしてることでだいぶ違うみたいな、なんかどっかで聞いた気がするんだけど、まあ、8ってすごいよ。8までいるってことは、言語ってさ、やっぱりそこら辺からさ、あそこまでの時間でやっぱりある程度のなんかsolid base はできるじゃん。だからさ、やっぱりそれはでかいと思うよ。
I'm angry. I think it's, and let me just take this as another thing to say that if you, and you know, I'm calling people out. I don't know if I'm calling listeners out here. But you know, if I am doing it right now. If you are somebody who's bilingual, by birth, as in you learned it because your parents or where you lived, it is not the same. Just so you might know, I know maybe every listening podcast already knows this, but you are not a language learner. I'm just calling it out. You're not a language learner. It's a complete. I somebody who's done this. This is how much it frustrated me going here. I don't deserve to have understood any of that comedy act. It was incredibly fast. And like, if I listened to it, I was like, wow, this guy's speaking like 300 syllables a second. Crazy. My brain somehow was falling. I'm like, this isn't fair. Like, I know that people probably study Spanish for years, and they can. Well, not like for basically, it's basically if I didn't understand the word or slang, then I wouldn't know. But like I wasn't ever, like, it's not, it was never that I didn't catch what he was saying. It's like I just didn't know the word if it came up. But I did learn some slang there. And I also learned, like, in the conversation, even though I never heard a Chilean accent, like, or maybe wasn't aware of what it was, or a Colombian accent in my head, I was able to follow that he was using a Colombian accent and then a Chilean accent in the context of him speaking Spanish. And then he had one very funny portion where he was, it's hard to explain the thing, but it was about, he had a bit about a telenovela. If you know what telenovela is, don't even worry about it. It's like Spanish dramas. And in it, he was also doing a gringo Spanish accent. So an intentional, like, American Spanishy accent. And all of it was really fast. And I'm like, bro, I don't deserve to have understood any of that. I don't deserve it. And I don't know. It was a completely random conversation or topic here, but I got angry. What?
I wasn't called out.
Oh, no, yeah.
No.
Yeah. I'm just saying. So go ahead.
Yeah, because I got English skill after, I don't know, like 2.
Oh, you're talking about our yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, we went to a comedy club in New York, and that's a whole separate conversation. But anyways, I'm gonna go to the next comment by Shotcooks. My apology for the random rant. I just felt it's the weirdest sense of frustration I ever felt. I'm like, yeah, I just felt like it's cheating. I felt like I was like, this is hacks. Having any early languages, but it's like, what? Anyways, comment from Shotcooks goes as oh yeah, I think I answered all I said. Anyways, comment from Shotcooks goes as follows. I've mentioned these learning communities before. I do love them, but for different reasons. The Moe way is definitely the hardcore, big dick swinging, 50 hours a day, learn Japanese in 8 months crowd. I participate in the immersion leaderboards. I'm kicking out at 50th place consistently, while there are people reading more in a week than my entire lifetime. The other learning community is just super wonderful and supportive. It's a mix of Japanese learning and ultimate game lovers. It's mostly women. And I think it naturally lends more to being supportive and less competitive, while kind of having the same exact methodology. Language YouTube definitely hit me hard as I was starting out, and I definitely consumed hours of it. Thankfully, I was old enough for it to not really affect me that much. Like, I learned what I learned and didn't become a zealot for anything. I imagine it hits the teenagers hard, though. Like, the content path slowly making people more and more extreme, like red pilling. I appreciate the beautiful sounds of Panama's wildlife. Very much beautiful. No hate, all nature. And then there's a comment about SEO. Thank you so much. And you'll probably hear this grasshopper. And this will be the last time in a while you see me with the panel background,
next time
which looks
we'll be
like
in
a cave.
Japan.
Yeah, next podcast episode will be in Japan. But yeah, it is. I mean, although I know the lighting's been really bad on my end. It's very hard to get good lighting. And right now, like, because I'm trying to like min-max interacting with my family and other stuff like that, it's been possible to get done what I want to do with editing the video. And right now it's like 11 o'clock and I go to sleep at like 8 o'clock. I'm like an old man, so I'm dying right now. So it's been rough, but it's been a good journey trying to do the podcast in Panama, but I'm definitely excited for the editing, the schedule and everything, which will be much easier in Japan. Anyway, as for the two communities, I think you did mention them before. And although I can't I don't know what part of me, I just intrinsically I can't get along. Like, it's in my head. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not sure if I obviously don't think you've had any opportunities to be in like these like hardcore communities like that here. But I always just feel like they're doing it wrong, and people can do however they want. But in my head, competition and language learning just mix terribly. And I just see it as you're framing the game in the weirdest way possible. Yeah, I feel like I told you before, I feel like you're framing a game of who's the best loser, because like I said, native speakers just crush everybody. We just had my Spanish conversation. I know there's someone who's probably learned Spanish for 7 years or 8 years every day, listening to Spanish, doing all there. And I come in, I don't know last time I used Spanish before I came to this thing, come and go to a comedy show, understand most of it, and it was extremely fast, like even for a normal Spanish speaker. And I was like, I didn't deserve that. And so that's why I feel like language learn, like a lot of people in, I'm not going to say about these specific communities, your communities might be great, but I feel like if you're learning like 24 hours a day, anything, maybe there is a really good reason you have, but a lot of times I'm like, what trauma did you go through? What are you compensating for? Why, especially if you start being judgmental. But in my head, the competition is kind of connected there. I'm like, why do you feel the need to do this? You're not getting love from someplace you should be? And not to say that, I haven't like gone really hard as well, but I just never framed it in a competition. I definitely don't feel like, for me personally, framing it as a competition with other people would be something healthy at all. Like I said, ultimately my learning with I've talked about my language learning journey a little bit here, but fundamentally I'm a man who liked anime and Japanese culture, and therefore I learned Japanese, and it's not much, and I therefore also majored in Japanese, and it's not really deeper than that. I don't like, if you're talking about like accents earlier with English, and I feel like that's another thing. I wish there are more I hope maybe, I don't know, if we get more and more immigrants and more different ways of Japanese, and Japanese people, a large portion of them who don't even know pitch accent because they don't have their language and they learn it as a secondary speaker, then I feel like people will start getting a lot more and by people I mean just specific people, but start being a lot less annoying about like Japanese, talking about Japanese as if it's the beautiful, holy, sacred land which must not be stepped on, or is more important than it is. It's like a language like every other language, and this is coming from a guy doing a podcast, a main channel, majored in Japanese, done book translations. I don't know if I have respect for the language, but I enjoy what I get out of it. And I feel like if like the people in these communities enjoy it, it's a positive thing, all the power to them. I just personally don't think it's the way for me. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, Amy. I know I was just talking quite a bit there. Okay. Well, thanks so much for the comments again this week. Last time in Panama, signing off from Panama, natural noises, and I'm extremely tired. This is the latest I've ever filmed the podcast. You guys might not think it's too late. For me, it's very late. Yeah, thanks so much. That bell means we've reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us, another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com, and we might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Ayami.
Signing off. Jane.
Jane.
See you in Japan.